Good morning and welcome to MidDay Café.
Thank you. Our topic today is data privacy and unlocking corporate knowledge with Microsoft Copilot.
But before we do so, I have to give a little, brought my hat because this weekend here in the United States, we're celebrating
the 4th of July.
So happy birthday, America.
Yay.
I won't make you all suffer through this hat too small for my big head for today, but there we go. So Tyrelle, I don't know about you, but before we get to the main topic, I've had a super busy week. I know you've been incredibly
really busy. Yeah, it's the last week of our fiscal.
Last
right?
week, yeah, today is the last day.
Last day.
So it's been a crazy rush, people trying to get stuff through. But you've had some stuff I know top of mind, a number of things that get into a lot of the meat of which then we'll talk about some of that and we'll bring it on back to our topic on security and knowledge and all that. So what's been top of mind for you?
Well, the Tour de France.
Tour de France.
Starts soon. Yep. So there's a really cool series on Netflix called Unchained. And it's about the tour last year. So I've been watching that because it's fascinating.
Really? It's on Netflix?
It's on Netflix.
I'll have to take a look.
Yeah, but it's so interesting because there's so many just analogies I think of when I watch that or when I'm riding that I've shared with you. And one of them is like one of the trainers or head coaches was talking about how you have to stay in the Peloton for life. If you somehow fall out of the Peloton, you're dead.
So you need to explain that to me because when I hear Peloton, I think as a non-biker, I think of that bike on TV.
Right.
So what are you talking about?
So the Peloton is actually the whole group, like the group that's riding together, the whole pack.
That's how they got the name for the bike, because you're doing virtual.
Exactly, yes. And so, like, if you're not in that pack, then you're going to get left behind because you're getting, you're drafting in that pack. It's kind of like a living, breathing organism, right? Mm-hmm. The other thing is, and what the teams are doing is they're positioning themselves in a way that they can have, like, their leader who's going to sprint or whatever be in the breakaway pack. Gotcha. So they're trying, within the Peloton, there's even, places that you're trying to be. And so I think about that with like our customers and companies, and corporations being in the pack of all the kind of adopting the new innovative technologies like Copilot. And AI and generative AI today. And the ones that aren't, and aren't positioning themselves to they're
not in the Peloton.
Right. They're not in the Peloton. And
got it.
Once you fall back, it's really hard to catch back up again. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of my analogy today.
So for the Tour de France and companies, and that is a great analogy with when we talk about, Copilot, because this whole idea of I keep hearing it over and over with customers, generative AI and the transformative, capability that they're seeing, customers are, and that if they're not doing that, that's a major competitive component that they'll be out of that Peloton. Right. They'll be falling way behind their competitors who are embracing and moving forward.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So I saw I'm just looking at our notes, but besides that, you had a couple of things you wanted to cite, it looks like. Digital HR leaders and podcasts.
I was listening to this really cool podcast. It's called Digital HR Leaders, podcast by David Green.
Yeah. And
he was interviewing Heather McGowan, and she's just written a book called The Empathy Advantage. So it's really like a new thought-provoking leadership strategy today. And you've got to kind of rethink leadership for the future of work. And that's what the podcast was about. But I can't wait to read the book. It just sounds so, important today to kind of be embracing these new strategies. Like the workforce of even 2019 is not the workforce of today, right?
It isn't. And expectations are different.
Yeah. Employees are empowered now. And they have expectations and they want more out of work and they want more. And they're empowered because these, skill sets are in demand. And so the more that leaders can kind of embrace that in an empathetic way and figure out what employees want to be really engaged and do their best work, and then give that to them, the more it adds to the bottom line.
So what would be like, again, just real briefly, and then we'll get into the topic, but because that's a fascinating thing for me. It's very similar to what you talked about with the Peloton, right? One is a technological piece, but the other that you kind of inferred is this whole idea that as an employee, they're feeling more empowered. And if, I know in years past, a key initiative has always been retention of top talent and stuff. And if I can work remote, hybrid, more and more, what are some of the things that you're seeing and that have really come up as those pieces that if a company's not starting to embrace these changes, this leadership, outlook, it's going to, again, leave them behind?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that's really important is just data-driven decision-making. And we have the capability now to really instrument and study and analyze, people as assets. I've talked about that before, and understand what's working and what's not. And then when we see that with the data, maybe we have a hypothesis and we test it. Hey, does are employees that working from home as productive as employees that are in the office? I mean, just looking at that from the data perspective. And then learning from that versus just using what's always worked in the past, or what the, kind of tribal knowledge is, or the rule of thumb, or what in the past has worked as a leader. Maybe you're a boomer or even Gen X leader. Yeah. And what kind of worked in the past isn't working today. So learning from the data versus just trying to push harder and demand more. And hey, the latest thing I saw is, everybody has to come in the office on Mondays. Right. Did you see that on LinkedIn? It's like, I have. I mean,
a couple of different orgs saying that.
That's going to make us more innovative and more productive. That's not true. That's in the data. We've already proven that. Yeah. And so it's just kind of silly to me that, that would even be something that somebody would be testing on their actual employees.
But I think it gets back to what you were talking about a little earlier with, it's the way they've done things. So intuitively, we expect that, well, this is how it always worked in the past, and now we're past this piece. We need to get back to doing things a certain way. But like you said, the data shows that's not necessarily the case. Right. And then those employees who are getting frustrated are they're going to leave. They're going to go somewhere else. Find someplace else.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Because people really revisited the place that work has in their life over the pandemic, and kind of changed that relationship with work. Yeah. And they're not going back. Right. So.
Especially your top tiers.
Yeah.
Because they don't, even in a, strained economy, top tier folks are always in demand.
Exactly.
Period.
Yeah. 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 In fact, I have a friend who was really excited, first C-suite position, and was really happy for the first year, and then got a new CEO. And the new CEO was like, if I want your opinion, I'll tell it to you. And so what are they doing? They're looking for another job. Right? Yeah, exactly.
No, and I totally see that. And it's not even, people think, well, if you're paying them enough, they'll just eat it. And I think going back to what you said, I mean, I even think about in my own career over the years, I had a job where it was very well compensated. I had the ultimate, and it was a company where it was about as secure as it gets. Right? I could have wrote out my 20 or whatever and been looking at a retirement now. And, but I was frustrated because, it was the management style and styles and things. And so.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're here, because now we get to do this.
Me too. So that's all great, because that all gets into this whole thing around that idea of what you said. Now I'm going to be thinking Peloton. I have a whole new outlook on Peloton. You know what it made me think of at first when you said it, besides the bike? I saw, have you ever seen, they call it the bait bowl? It's fish.
Yes.
Where, to protect themselves, they form this huge bait ball of the small fish to look bigger than they are and all that. That's what I thought of. But this idea of you don't want to get left behind. Mm-hmm. And so if you're not looking, and if you're not doing data-driven decision-making,
right,
like Viva helps with,
right, absolutely,
right, with things like insights, org insights, sat on a beautiful demo yesterday with Glint, got to listen to, how Glint fits into that picture. And it's about data-driven versus what you think.
It's what else? Oh, and another thing they said in the podcast was, before the pandemic, your most valuable player was your CFO. And then during the pandemic, it was your CIO or your CTO. Right. Now it's your CHRO. And so if the other chief executives aren't partnering with that CHRO really closely, they're missing out on a huge opportunity, because the value, about 90% of the value in any company comes from the people.
Yeah.
So, I'm a big, fan of people as an asset.
Yes.
So tell us about, leading into that, unlocking corporate knowledge. How do we unlock corporate knowledge in a protected, private way?
And reduce burnout and all that. I mean, again, part of that whole Peloton, right? And I think this is one of those, going to the very beginning when you talked about technology. So I was in a meeting the other day, as I often am. I think we both are. And so I'm in a meeting and with some important a whole bunch of executives, and talking about Copilot and all the things that it can do. And the one individual who is their lead, and this is all good because they were going based off of their experiences in the past where they'd been really hands-on and stuff, but technology's changed. And so their comment, which if they had said this to me 6 months before, I'd have been, you are spot on. But that's how fast stuff's changing. So their comment was, before we can take advantage of unlocking all this knowledge and Copilot and AI helping to generate content and analyze content and do all this stuff, we have to get our ducks in a row around knowledge and knowledge management. We have to make sure it's being labeled and classified and organized and all that. Otherwise, it's useless. And I was like, actually, it's not.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, because there's this thing, I'll just give you the name, but then we'll talk about what it does, and it'll make a little more sense. It's called Semantic Indexing. Semantic Indexing. And Semantic Indexing, it's basically Harry Potter brought to it's kind of like magic, though. It really is.
You were going to tell me a Harry Potter analogy.
I was going to give you
well, it is.
We have wizards that sit in Microsoft 365 and go, no, but it's this new service that really takes what, the world's been looking at, ChatGPT. And they're oftentimes questioning, well, how can you be using ChatGPT with 365 and keep all that data secure? And by the way, how can you also then unlock all that without sending the information over to OpenAI, the company, outside of our cloud, to over here to OpenAI, ChatGPT.
Right.
How are you able to do that? And it really is this thing called Semantic Index. So what I want to talk about it.
Okay.
Because it is like having wizards in your environment.
Well, I love this. That's exciting because I want to know. I don't understand how it works, and I really want to know.
It is so cool. So I'm going to play, though, a brief, it's like a 1 minute, 2 minute clip.
Oh, good.
That kind of walks through. And if you're not watching us, that's okay, because you'll still be able to get everything you need right out of just listening. If you're just listening on the audio, it's going to describe it. And then we'll go in and talk about how it keeps your data private and how it really unlocks that corporate knowledge.
Awesome.
So let's go ahead and play.
Semantic Index for Copilot creates a sophisticated map of your personal and company data, identifying relationships and making important connections. In fact, your brain works like a semantic index by encoding multiple words and pictures to create a larger conceptual map of information. For example, a semantic map of what the average person knows about elephants would include things like elephants have trunks, and elephants travel in herds, and elephants live in Africa. Today, people are mostly familiar with keyword search, which relies on exact words and phrases. So, when you search for March sales report, you get a list of documents that include exactly those 3 words. But a semantic index understands that sales reports are produced by Kelly on the finance team and published each month as an Excel file. And it encodes all of these concepts and relationships between concepts in vectors in the index. Semantic Index for Copilot analyzes your data. That's all your emails, documents, calendar, chats, and more in the Microsoft Graph, and uses a large language model, or LLM, to map all your content and the relationships between your content and you, searching through billions of vectors to find the most relevant results in milliseconds. It's what enables Microsoft 365 Copilot to deliver personalized, relevant, and actionable responses, and do so in a secure, compliant, privacy-preserving way. Semantic Index for Copilot enables every organization to be AI ready.
All right. So that was a quick overview. Now you and I weren't able to listen, but in a nutshell, what it showed was, we've talked to customers about, we have the largest, you said it before.
The largest data set of human behavior at work that's ever been created.
And it's called the
Microsoft Graph.
Microsoft Graph. Everything, your emails, your conversations, if you're in a meeting and you're on mute and have your thing off and you're chatting with people and email, it knows everything.
Yeah.
Knows all those
your
data.
multitasking.
Yes. And it actually will tell you sometimes, is this meeting optional because you are multitasking frequently during it? But so it has all that data, but what it doesn't have is the inferences. And so ChatGPT in the public realm that everybody's heard about, and they've played, a lot of folks have played with it. We have kids trying to write reports for college using it. They train ChatGPT, this thing they call the large language model, with all this information gets sucked in from the internet and added to it to train it. But if we did that with our customers, that would be a breach of their privacy.
Yeah.
So what we do is we take the model that's been built, the model that helps understand your question or your request. What do you want it to do? It also understands how to provide language around all that. We take the model before it's trained, right? We take that developed model, we bring a copy into Microsoft Azure. Okay. So it's in what we call the Microsoft 365 trust boundaries. So it's a service that we manage, make sure it's scaled, make sure it's private. And we've been doing that Azure piece for a while. Remember Stream first generation? That was all in that Azure piece, right? But your data was still private. So it was in that 365. What we do with the semantic index, though, is since we don't want to take your data and train that model, which would be exposing your data, we kind of do the training piece in a separate piece called the semantic index.
Oh,
So
okay.
it goes inside your tenant. It sits there with the graph in your tenant, private to you, and it looks at all that data in that world's largest data set, the graph, and it says, Tyrelle, I ask it, hey, I'd like to suggest a different way of writing reports to management. How can we improve our processes? So it goes out and it says, who writes reports for management today? Tyrelle Barnes. Well, we can't improve on that, but if what we can do though, it'll say, it understands Tyrelle's writing reports today. These are the reports she's produced. This is how many times they've been accessed. And besides that, people that she works with have worked with it. It starts to pull in not just the data points, but the broader inferences and rich information that brings it all together, so that when you type in and say, write a paper, write a Word doc suggesting how we can improve our senior reporting, blah, 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 that'll go over here to Chat GPT, the model, which will understand it. It'll put in then the request over here to where the graph data is and where the semantic index is. That'll understand the context and the inferences and all that, bring that portion with then what ChatGPT would do to write it, but leaving like numbers blanks and others, and influence. It also further influences how it's all structured. So it draws an inference. Well, Tyrelle works frequently with Mike Gannotti around these reports, and Mike's a slacker. And if we took him out of the process, but it would understand all this, because we see he's actually only working on it 3 minutes a day versus her.
So it sounds like Harry Potter is my executive admin.
Yes, exactly. Who knows everything.
He knows everything.
And can translate it. So
and
think
it's
of
really
it.
fast, because it's like 2 seconds.
Yes, it's milliseconds. I mean, literally. And so that's by doing a pre-indexing around all that.
Yeah.
It serves really as almost like a language it serves as translator between ChatGPT, the graph, and the person. And it brings all that magically together and serves it up. So by doing that, your data never leaves your tenant, stays right there. The only thing that goes over here to ChatGPT are your questions or, commands. What are you asking it to do in Excel, Word, etc.
Okay.
We do store those for 30 days.
Okay.
That gets stored there, but it gets expunged, and that's purely for support.
Okay.
Because if there was, it's not coming back with relevancy, then we'll take a look at that.
Right.
But per customer request.
Right.
Right.
And a tenant is also, you can think of a tenant as a private cloud. So we use the term tenant a lot, but it's the same as a private cloud.
Thank you.
So,
Yes. So our data, this magical large language model called ChatGPT that does all this great stuff, and then the translator that understands what this wants to do and all the knowledge this has, that's Semantic Index.
That is so cool. Thanks for explaining that, because now I understand and I have a much better in my head, I have a much better visual of what's actually happening when I write a prompt, right?
Yeah, and I think it's important just because, again, customers are asking data privacy.
Yeah.
Because right now, if I'm a customer, we have many customers saying, hey, well, we want to do, maybe I'm just going to go straight to OpenAI, and that means your data will go out
into the whole world.
Yes. Yeah, it will train the model and become part of the public domain.
Do you think people might be doing that already?
I think there are some that are doing that. And and I've had, again, the same executives who understand and know that's been happening. That's been the one hesitancy, and why all my my Copilot discussions the last week have shifted from, hey, show us the whiz bang wow, to, okay, what's happening in the back end and how are you securing my data? Because I know for a fact that people are doing this.
Right. Yeah. Just like if people are not using like Teams for chats, if people are using their own device and just texting SMS, that's also not secure.
No.
Either.
It's not.
So if they don't have a way to chat with each other, within the company trust boundary, then they're likely leaking things unintentionally. But so lots of opportunity to be really clear on data privacy and security. So important.
We just published a white paper on all that.
Oh, we did?
Yeah. So it's out there. It's like, I always talk about, building the plane as you fly. We're learning ourselves a lot of this just ahead of the customers. So, there's some great, in fact, Adrian, give you a shout out. Adrian, hi. he found it first. He was like, we were in a meeting, and he was literally, as the customer was asking some of the questions, scanning through the paper and then pasting stuff into the chat.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah,
for
Adrian's
them.
great to work with.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But so, we'll supply some of this afterwards, some information, some pointers so that you can learn about how this works. And that's all I've got. I mean, I think that's huge. But the fact is, we can give you all that richness because of this thing called the Semantic Index. It runs before you start working with Copilot, and then it continues to iterate.
And get smarter
as it goes, right? The more you put in, the more nuance and stuff it will gain. So,
just like
but
Harry
in
Potter.
your tenant, yours. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much. And I hope you have a fun, great weekend.
I do too. Oh, real quick, I know you got to run. Any big plans for the weekend?
Yes, I'm doing a ride, Roan Mountain. We're riding a group of friends. We're
of course
riding
you
Roan
are.
Mountain. So excited. How about you?
She's fit. She's the fit one. I'm the.
What do you got going on this weekend?
We're gonna relax a bit, but we're planning on the boat.
On the lake?
We'll go out on the boat, and then Monday, our young puppy, she goes to get spayed.
Oh, wow.
So
That'd be awesome.
That's it.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks.
Well, thank
Hope
you.
Everybody has a great, happy 4th of July.
Yeah, and if you have suggestions, you've been getting feedback that we're
I've gotten
incorporating.
feedback. Thank
Let
you.
us know. We'd love to hear. We're continually trying different things, new setting, new camera. I brought in the Logitech Rally Cam.
Table, high top.
So I'm not doing the slump with my belly sticking.
We're going to have some artwork and signage soon.
Yes. So we'd love to hear, requests, comments, suggestions. So with that, this is Mike.
This is Tyrelle.
Have a great day. Take care. Have a great weekend. Ciao.
Thanks, everybody.